Guys, what's up? Hey, it's Matt. Hold on, wait a minute. Let me turn this down some. What is going on, guys? It is Matt, and we're back. There we go. We're back with another episode of Comics Daily Weekly, the weekly version of the daily Twitter account that I run that discusses mostly Marvel Comics from the beginning of the Silver Age from 1961 all the way through wherever we're at now. So where we're at now is November 1966. Today we are going to be talking about 8 comics. Normally we just cover 6 because I only read one a day for 6 days and then read something else random on the 7th day, which is Saturday. However, this week, since we're covering November 1966, there were 2 annuals that came out this week. Amazing Spider-Man Annual number... Hold on. I already lost my numbers. Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 4 and Fantastic Four Annual... I'm sorry. Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 3, Fantastic Four Annual number 4. So we have got to squeeze in 8 issues where we would normally talk about 6. That's why I started the stream a little bit early. So we've got an extra 15 minutes to talk about those. A couple of these books this week weren't super great. So, we'll see. We'll see how much there is to say about them. But let's go ahead and get started because we have a lot to cover, and we've got about an hour and 45 minutes to do it in. Hopefully, it won't take that long. But after this is another episode of my other podcast that I do with my buddies Pete and Opie called Anything New. Going to be streaming that on this channel at 9:30 Eastern. So if you want to watch that, come back then, or if you listen to it, then that's fine too. So anyway, Amazing Spider-Man number... Oh, actually, let me tell you which issues we're going to be talking about first. This week, November 1966, Amazing Spider-Man number 42, Tales of Suspense number 83, Daredevil number 22, Avengers number 34, Strange Tales number 150, and Fantastic Four number 56, in addition to Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 3 and Fantastic Four Annual number 4, like I mentioned a minute ago. So we're going to get right into it. Amazing Spider-Man number 42, The Birth of a Superhero. Now, this was a continuation of Amazing Spider-Man number 41, obviously. But it continues the story started last issue. We talked about it last week, where John Jameson had just returned from a space mission, and he was infected with space spores, and nobody knew how that was going to affect him. Last week we saw the first appearance of the Rhino. The Rhino was hired by, I don't think we really know who, but the Rhino was hired by somebody to capture John Jameson because they wanted the secrets of those space spores, because everybody assumed, because this is comic book world, everybody assumed that the spores were going to give him some kind of superpowers instead of it being the real world. We're thinking, oh shoot, that's going to kill him because it's, radiation or something. Other governments were convinced that they were going to give him superpowers, and they wanted the secrets of those spores for themselves. John Jameson was walking around last issue with 2 government guys that were protecting him. Well, this issue continues that story, and lo and behold, the space spores did give him superpowers. They basically gave him super strength, as we can see in these first few pages. Actually, let's go ahead and start at the first page. Spider-Man's robbing a bank. Why? That's weird. Everybody's yelling. He really is a menace. J. Jonah Jameson at the Daily Bugle was correct. He is a menace to society. He's stealing our money. And it looks legit, too. He's got a money bag. He's dropping it in the ocean. Meanwhile, Ned Leeds and Betty Brant are back. Frederick Foswell's back. The gang's all here, basically. And Frederick Foswell's got to go out and get the story of why Spider-Man is robbing this bank. Meanwhile, John Jameson is in Jonah Jameson's office. Just talking about all the craziness that's happened. And all of a sudden, he starts to, for all intents and purposes, Hulk out. I'm going to turn my mic down just a little bit. I feel like I'm yelling. He gains super strength. He grows physically in size. His clothes tear. I mean, he's literally hulking out. He just isn't turning big and green. So take him to a lab, and come to find out, yeah, he's grown. He's gotten stronger. It's basically the equivalent of being on the moon. So you know how we would all be technically stronger on the moon, even though it's really the gravity that would make it appear that way. He has to wear a special suit because his body can't. It kind of can't cope with the changes that it's going through. So he wears a special suit in order to help him cope with what's happened to him. But you can see here, he's quite a bit bigger. Jonah Jameson only comes up to his shoulder now, so he's that tall now. He's and super strength. I don't think he ever really got any other superpowers besides super strength. But there is another change that we'll talk about in a minute. So Jonah Jameson sort of prods his son John to go after Spider-Man because Spider-Man just robbed a bank. Who else can stop Spider-Man than John Jameson? John Jameson, according to Jonah, is stronger than Spider-Man now, even though all he really did was smash a desk and punch a hole through a wall. Pretty sure Spidey could do that too. But here we see, go get him, Johnny. Squash that wall crawler like a bed bug. You can do it. Okay, Dad, you're on. So John Jameson, and it takes a little convincing too, because John remembers when Spider-Man saved his life way back 41, 42 issues ago in Amazing Spider-Man #1. But he realizes Spider-Man's turned evil, and I've got to go stop him. Meanwhile, they're trying to figure out what to do with the Rhino. From last issue, remember, Spider-Man knocked him out, turned him over to the authorities. They're basically trying to keep him drugged up because they don't know how to handle someone with his immense strength. Meanwhile, Foggy Nelson of Nelson and Murdoch fame, of Daredevil fame, has been assigned as his defense attorney, and he reluctantly accepts. He doesn't really want to, but he's going to. This spoiler alert never really comes into play anywhere. He pops up. I read issue number 43 today, so we'll talk about that next week. And there is a couple panels where he shows up, but this is kind of weird because nothing ever comes of this. Now, due to the events in issue number 43, which again we'll talk about next week, I guess it could come into play later. But so far, this wasn't really much of a. It's really just more of a cameo than anything else. The Rhino does manage to escape. He sort of comes out of his trance, but he's stopped again. So basically, they're just having trouble keeping hold of him, right? Anyway, we go back now. We're looking at Peter Parker hanging out or running into Flash, Gwen, and Harry. And they invite him to go hang out. He says, sure. But then he remembers, and keep this in mind in a couple minutes. He remembers, oh, shoot, I promised Aunt May that I would finally meet her neighbor, Anna Watson. I would finally meet her niece, Mary Jane Watson. We have heard tale of this Mary Jane Watson character for, gosh, I don't even know, maybe a dozen or two issues by now. We've never seen her face. She's always she's shown up. She's always been, whether she has like a scarf covering her, like a shawl covering her head, or she might be at Aunt May's house to meet Peter and then leaves right before Peter gets there. They've always just barely passed, and this has gone on for a really, really long time. We first heard tale of MJ's name. I mean, it must have been like 20 issues ago or something like that. I can't quite remember. But it's been a long time. It's been a lot of cat and mouse. And he finally agreed to meet her. Peter and Aunt May are going to go over to the Watsons' house and have dinner with Anna and her niece, Mary Jane. So he has to bail once again on Flash and Gwen and Harry. And he's really... So remember last issue, he and Betty sort of went out for coffee and to see if there were any sparks left after Betty had left for a while. And there were none. And the minute he realized he didn't have any feelings for Betty anymore, he realized he was into Gwen. It was just that easy. It was just that quick. So he really wants to hang out with Gwen now, and he has to sort of shut her down again because he has to meet Mary Jane. One thing that I did make note of in my notes and my tweets for this is I think this panel right here, and if I ever release this on audio version, then sorry folks who are just listening when I refer to this right here or this panel where you can see that. There's no good way to talk about. Well, that's not true. I was going to say there's no good way to talk about a visual medium in audio form, but that's not true. There's plenty of people who do it. But I'm referring to a specific panel here where Gwen Stacy is wearing the black headband. And I want to say this is the first appearance of her black headband. Her hair she's had like these weird little knots in her hair before now, and now she's got the black headband. I know that seems silly to make a big deal out of a character wearing a black headband or any type of accessory like that, but Gwen Stacy, I mean, that's her trademark look is the black headband. Now, eventually, when we get closer to the 70s, we'll see the green jacket with the black shirt and the purple skirt and the black headband. Right now, she's been wearing a lot of pink, but that's just one of the things that that's one of the cool reasons we're doing it this way is to see these characters evolve and to take note of the first time we see certain trends, certain characteristics of a character that are well known. So I think this is the first appearance of her black headband. It just kind of jumped out at me. Don't judge me. So he has to blow them off again, but this does not deter Gwen from still kind of being into Peter. She understands that he has to go meet his aunt, do stuff with his aunt, and she gets it. So that was kind of nice. I was thinking, oh no, here we go again. Just when they were starting to mend things, patch things over, he has to blow her off again. She's gonna get mad, but that didn't really happen. She's cool with it, so good for her. Anyway, we go back to Spider-Man swinging around again to clear the cobwebs, even though spiders shouldn't want to clear the cobwebs, but whatever. And all of a sudden, Spider-Man encounters John Jameson, a powered-up, stronger, bigger John Jameson, and they fight. Spider-Man tries to convince him not to. He tries to convince him that the bank robbery wasn't what it looked like, but John Jameson isn't having it. I did like this panel where John Jameson sort of he smashes a chimney or the side of a building or whatever, and a bunch of bricks go flying. Spider-Man webs up those bricks and then swings it around and hits Jameson with said bricks. I just thought that was kind of a neat sequence there. In the middle of this issue, it's just a lot of action. Not a lot to. It's cool action. I do like this panel here. I think that I like that panel because it makes Spider-Man look muscular. Spider-Man's not supposed to be huge like Thor or the Hulk. I mean, he's obviously strong and muscular, but he's supposed to be more limber, more slender. He does a lot of acrobatics. He's supposed to have that type of body. But I've always kind of liked when he is a little bit bulkier because he's strong. I mean, he can lift, what is it, like 50 tons or something like that? So I've always kind of liked him being a little bit beefier, and that was sort of a calling card of John Romita. The way he drew Spider-Man, he drew Spider-Man a little bit beefier. Now, again, this is still early Romita, so he still hasn't fully evolved into his Romita style, his classic Romita style, but we're starting to see shades of it. Every issue that goes by, we're starting to see shades of it. So that's just one. This panel just kind of jumped out at me because that's classic Romita, a little bit thicker, bulkier Spider-Man, and I dig that. I've always liked that. So we do see, during this fight, or actually, I guess it's as Spider-Man is leaving the fight, we do get an explanation for why he, quote-unquote, robbed a bank. And turns out when he was in the bank as Peter Parker, his spider sense went off, and there was actually some bad guys in there who were planting a bomb, who were going to plant a bomb into the bank vault by hiding it in a money bag that goes into the vault. And so Spider-Man had to web up. I don't know why he didn't just see. This is in this panel right here. He's webbing up the bank guards and says, "Sorry, no time to explain." And I kind of hate that in comics or TV shows or anything. In the time it took you to say, sorry, friend, no time to explain now, he could have said, there's a bomb in the bag. Although I guess if you think about it, Spider-Man was in there as Peter Parker. It would have been hard for him to explain how he knew that there was a bomb in there when Spider-Man wasn't in the bank. Okay, all right. I guess I'd sort of talk myself out of that one. But basically, he had to steal the bag with the bomb in it, and that's why I threw it in the lake, or in the river, because he didn't want the bank to blow up. He didn't want the bad guys to steal the money. So that's why it appeared that he robbed the bank when he actually didn't. He actually didn't steal any money, and that's what. That's the way he's going to prove his innocence. Is he goes to Jonah Jameson and says, "Listen, tell the bank to count the money. You'll see that there's nothing missing." And Jonah reluctantly does that. And he does learn that there's no money missing. So here's where we go back to John Jameson. And remember how I said the spores granted him, he's larger in size. It granted him super strength. And it also changed him in one other way. Well, here we start to learn that it's affecting his mind. So Jonah actually tells John, you don't need to go after Spider-Man. He didn't actually rob the bank. No money was missing. We're all good. But John says no. John's a little bit angry. And he says, no, I have to go after him. I don't care what he is. I owe him something, and I'm going to pay it to him in spades. And even Jonah says, but don't you see, we'd better wait. If he didn't rob the bank, you can't do this. John says, I don't give a rap about who robbed the blasted bank. I've got to polish off Spider-Man no matter what. So it's affecting his mind. He's becoming a little bit more unstable. Now, one thing I noticed when this happened is that this is actually similar to Amazing Spider-Man number 38, which was Steve Ditko's last issue. The same exact thing happened. There was a guy who, I want to say it was chemicals, I can't quite remember, or he got electrified or something. Something happened, and it gave him super strength, and it also clouded his mind a little bit, and he went a little bit nuts. And so same things happened to John Jameson here. It's a little bit disappointing that they're sort of going back to the well with that same sort of tired trope, but I guess they had to have a reason for them to keep fighting. So the next several pages are just Spider-Man and John Jameson going at it again. I did make note of this panel. It was kind of cool that Spider-Man is falling from the top of a building. Obviously, that's not that big of a deal for Spider-Man. But I do like it that as he's falling upside down, the text is upside down as well. Sorry, I just heard something. The text is upside down as well. I kind of think that's neat. We've seen that in a couple other issues as well in the past. I just think that's a neat touch. I love visual stuff like that, especially like in the issue I read today, number 43. It was kind of neat that in a couple panels where they're fighting, you see the sound effects, the big sound effects spelled out. And it's fun. There was a couple times in number 43 where Spider-Man actually references those sound effects with the same spelling. It's kind of neat. So I kind of dig stuff like that too. So there's a lot of fighting. John and Spider-Man just fighting. John Jameson's mind is gone at this point. He's basically just in a blind rage. But then Spider-Man realizes this and figures out a way to fix him, basically. And luckily enough, they are in a place where the Spider-Man has the equipment that he needs. So dealt a shattering blow by two arms, possessing them almost indescribable proportionate strength of a spider. Jonah Jameson's maddened son staggers back exactly as we planned it. Now, the electromagnetic field built into your suit, remember we talked about how he had to wear a special suit, should cause a feedback from that generator, which will somehow reset it, essentially reset him back to normal. And it does. It works. That was a heck of a risk, and he took it, and it worked. And we can see he's actually even sort of shrunk back down now. So you can see the suit that he was wearing, it's actually quite a bit bigger for him now. He shrunk back down to normal size. All is well. John Jameson is recovered, or recovering, or cured, I guess, from the spores. And Peter is pretty happy until Aunt May realizes, or Aunt May reminds him, hey, get out of bed. we got to go meet Mary Jane for the first time ever. Spider-Man's kind of a jerk. Where was it? I thought it was in this issue. Oh, it was earlier in the issue where I won't flip back to it, but there was earlier in the issue where Spider-Man is lamenting having to meet Mary Jane, and he says, "I'm as anxious to meet Mary Jane Watson on Sunday as I am to meet the Hulk, and she'll probably look like him." Like, what a jerk, Peter. I mean, he's acting like this is such a big deal to meet Mary Jane. It's almost kind of arrogant of him to think that, because he doesn't want to meet Mary Jane. He didn't want to at first because he was so into Liz, or he was so into Betty. Now he's so into Gwen. And I don't know why being into a girl makes you want to not meet another girl. I don't know if he thinks they're going to fall in love with him, or he's obligated to fall in love with them. I don't know why he's been so reluctant. I mean, they've explained it a few times throughout the issues, but it just never made any sense, really. But anyway, all that to say, he finally does it. We get to the very last page of the issue. Peter and Aunt May go to Anna Watson's house. Now, Mary Jane lives in an apartment by herself, so she doesn't live with her aunt the way Peter does. They're at Anna Watson's house. Mary Jane's a couple minutes late. Peter is just so in love with Gwen. That's all I can think about is Gwen. Funny how I can't get Gwen out of my mind lately. Something tells me she kind of likes me. I never really did ever get to know her, but once I get this Mary Jane ordeal with, so he's just his head in the clouds over Gwen until this is classic. Peter Parker, I'd like you to meet my niece. You mean that's Mary Jane? And the classic face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot. This is one of the most classic panels in all of comic book history. Not necessarily the most classic, but everybody knows this panel. Even people who don't read comics know this panel. So this is the start, literally the start of a beautiful friendship and more. Although it's going to take us a long time to get there, because we have to go through the whole Gwen Stacy ordeal, which we haven't even really got to Peter and Gwen's relationship yet. Number 43 focuses, issue number 43 continues right from this spot, and it's the most interesting piece of that issue. So we'll talk about that next week. But Amazing Spider-Man number 42, we finally get the first full appearance of Mary Jane, and I was really excited for this because obviously, I started reading Spider-Man right around 1990. I was very familiar with the character before that, but I really started reading it on a month-to-month basis in around 1990. He was already married by then. So I've read some of these classic issues. I've never read them one by one from the start all the way through. So I never really got to see their relationship develop. So that's what I'm really kind of most excited to see in these next several issues, is I want to see how their relationship develops. I want to see how his and Gwen's relationship develop. I'm interested in reading all that just because I know how it all plays out, but I've just never seen it with my own eyes. So that's going to be pretty darn cool. Next, the Rhino on the Rampage, which is the one I read today. We'll get to that next week. All right, moving on to Tales of Suspense number 83. Now, again, Tales of Suspense is a double feature between Iron Man and Captain America. It has been since issue number 59, and it will be until issue 99. So we've got this issue, 16 more, and until they split off into their own issues. But let me flip to my notes here real quick, and we will get going on this one. This was a pretty solid issue, especially on the Iron Man side, because this is another one of those issues that's hard to talk about because there's not a lot to talk about because it's mostly just a big fight. And that's not a bad thing. Iron Man versus Titanium Man for the entire Iron Man side of this issue. So remember last issue when Titanium Man had trapped Pepper Potts in some kind of beam that when he blasted Iron Man with it, I thought it sort of fried his circuitry and made him unable to move, which would have more or less made sense. But it also, when he turned it on Pepper, she also couldn't move, which didn't make as much sense because she's not wearing any armor. But whatever. It is what it is. She's paralyzed in this beam. But Iron Man uses the same trick to free her, as he used to free himself last issue. He threw a live wire into the beam, which kind of shorted it out, and he tells her to, get out of here. And the rest of this is really just a fight. I mean, we're gonna blow through these pages. The rest of this is just a big fight between Iron Man and Titanium Man. More really great art by Gene Colan. I'm not sure if I know he's the artist in Iron Man #1, which we'll get to right around December. But I'm really enjoying his work on this. He also is over there drawing Daredevil. I'm enjoying his work. But again, Iron Man versus Titanium Man. One thing I will say about this issue, and one of the reasons I liked it, is because just like last issue, we finally, or not finally because it happened last issue, but we once again have an issue where Iron Man goes through a whole battle, and not once does he complain about running out of power. It's great, which is still weird because we've never seen him really do anything, make any kind of upgrades to his armor so that he won't run out of power. But I don't know if Stan just got tired of writing that or if they'll address it later, but we've had 2 or 3 consistent issues now where Iron Man hasn't said one solid thing about running out of power, and I love it because that got old. Issue after issue, that got super tiring. So that doesn't happen here at all. This is just a knockdown, drag-out fight between Iron Man and Titanium Man. We do have Pepper and Happy and a whole bunch of other people looking on at this fight. And remember, Iron Man was on his way to Washington to testify in front of Congress about the secrets of his armor. Tony was sort of lamenting the fact that he might have to reveal his secret, but he really didn't have any other choice because Senator Byrd had rejected or canceled all of Tony's government contracts, which means he wasn't getting any more money. He also did manage to shut off access to all of Tony's money, which, again, we talked about it last week. I don't really see how that is a thing that could happen, but, I mean, Tony was broke and he had no work, so he had to do something. And on his way to Washington, Titanium Man intercepted him, so that's why they're fighting now. So you can see there's a camera crew here. He's got a big crowd spectating this, but they're just fighting. They're just fighting, and it's great. And it's just, and it's great too because Iron Man, he really goes at it this time. He cuts loose. I want to say, I don't remember if let's see if I can find it. I do want to show you a panel that I made note of, and I believe I may have passed it here, right here. I don't want to zoom in, but these top 2 panels right here. If you were 1,000 times bigger than you are, nothing would stop me. Nothing. Iron Man is really going off on Titanium Man because Titanium Man endangered Pepper, and he's had it. So it's just really cool. This is an Iron Man that we haven't really seen up to now. He's no holds barred. And I love when that happens because Iron Man should be way more powerful than what he has been portrayed in this book up to this point, ever since issue number 39, really. They keep fighting. Let's see. The thunderous. Iron Man at one point hits him so hard that the thunderous impact causes an ear-shattering sonic boom to fill the air, and you can see that it impacts everybody standing there watching him, including Happy, which, if you remember, Happy has amnesia. He learned that in a previous engagement with Titanium Man, he realized that Tony Stark and Iron Man are one and the same, but during that battle, he lost his memory. Well, this sonic boom that was caused by Iron Man striking Titanium Man caused Happy to get all of his memories back. You can see here, Pepper, I remember everything. It's all come back to me again. I've lost my amnesia. And Pepper's all happy about that. No pun intended. Let's see. I don't remember. Let's see what they say, what Senator Byrd says to Iron Man. Lucky my foot. You stayed with it and kept fighting, even when everything seemed lost. Iron Man says, well, Senator, I had one advantage. This iron armor, designed by Tony Stark. Senator Byrd says, I'm not forgetting that, son. That or Stark either. And then, of course, Iron Man thinks that means he still wants me to testify before his committee. So we still have that plot thread kind of hanging out there. But the most interesting thing, oh yeah, and I want to mention this too because the ending, it makes the ending a little bit weird. Titanium Man sort of, he puts his tail between his legs and runs back to the submarine that the Russians launched him out of. But the Russians don't want to have anything to do with him at this point. And it's kind of a creepy ending. Titanium Man is just left in the ocean. Never speak his name again. In our nation's destiny, there is no place for failures. And Titanium Man, in busted armor, is in the middle of the ocean. Wait, I'm here. Stop. Don't leave. You can't. I did my best. You can't leave me. You can't. And they just leave him floating in the ocean. I thought that was sort of a grim ending for him, although he'll come back. They always come back. But as good of an issue as this was, with a no-holds-barred fight between Iron Man and Titanium Man, the coolest thing to me was this part right here. Very end. The last thing that we read was Happy thinking to himself, he doesn't know my memories returned. He, talking about Tony, he doesn't know my memories returned again, and with it, the knowledge which only he and I possess, that the Golden Archer is none other than Tony Stark himself. So that's really interesting. Obviously, we know that everybody now knows that Tony is Iron Man. But this was really cool at the time. And one thing, too, I really like that image of Happy. When Happy first showed up in number 40-something... I can't remember the issue. I hate that. No, not 40. That would be way too early. Well, maybe. 40 or 50-something. He was drawn as sort of a big lug, like a big buffoon, sort of the big chin, and he's just kind of like this big dumb guy. But they've changed his look over time, and now Happy, he's a pretty striking dude himself, and I really like that image of Happy. But yes, so we finally, I hate Amnesia. I've always hated Amnesia stories in anything, TV shows, movies, comic books. I've never liked Amnesia. I think about the season 2 of Heroes when Peter lost his memory after we got an awesome season 1 finale, and he finally realized his powers and knew what he could do, and then he lost his memory, and the whole season 2, it's like starting over, and I couldn't stand it. So Happy's finally got his memories back, and he remembers that Tony's Iron Man. So it'll be interesting. What I don't know is if he's going to confront him immediately, or if he's going to drag it out for a while. If it's going to be one of those things, that it's kind of a trope where one character learns the secret of a hero, but then they both play coy for a long time. I think it happened in Arrow. Didn't it happen in Arrow? No, maybe. I can't remember what show it was. I think it was one of the CW shows where the person knows the secret identity of the other person, but the hero doesn't know that the other person knows, and then they just play this cat and mouse game for forever. It gets really tiring. So hopefully that doesn't happen here. I'll be reading Tales of Suspense number 84 tomorrow on Monday the 7th, and then we'll talk about that next week. So more to come on that. But I like that part. I'm glad that Happy has his memories back. So over on the Captain America side of things, this issue, the Captain America story wasn't super great. So if you remember last issue, there was an android named the Adaptoid that had sort of infiltrated Avengers Mansion. He first took the appearance of Jarvis and served Captain America some coffee that was drugged, made him go through this hallucinatory state, and eventually took him out. Remember he put him on that tiny bed? Remember that? That was hilarious. So at the very end of last issue, the Adaptoid took the appearance of Captain America. And now he's going to go cause havoc in the Avengers. I'm not really sure if he ever really states his plans. It's so weird. The very first page of the story, though, it's just random. This guy named the Tumbler comes tumbling through the window. I guess that's just a thing that can happen in Avengers Mansion, and a bad guy can just go tumbling through the window? Sure, why not? And the whole issue, or a lot of this issue, is this guy named the Tumbler, whose special ability is tumbling, I guess. He's flipping around a lot. Tumbler is fighting what he thinks is Captain America, but we know that it's really the shape-changing android known as the Adaptoid. So the Adaptoid thinks, oh, this will be no problem. I have assumed the form of Captain America. this guy won't be a problem. However, and this is what I thought was actually kind of interesting about this story, and most of it visually is just them fighting, right? I mean, so you can see here is just, except for the Tumbler's origin, which we'll talk about in a second. But you can see most of these pages here are just the Tumbler and Adaptoid Captain America, which maybe I thought could be called Adcaptoid. I don't know, that's really lame. But most of them is just them fighting. The Adaptoid assumes he's going to win, but the Tumbler actually is beating him. And he's throwing his shield at him, and both of them are surprised with how easily the Tumbler is beating. Tumbler is thinking, wow, he's really not quite as... He's not living up to the legend that he's supposed to be. Meanwhile, Adaptoid is saying, I should be beating this guy way better than this. How is he beating me? So they're both really surprised at how well this is going for Tumbler. And there's a one page about Tumbler's origin. It doesn't even really matter. It's just, he was just some loser. He was just a guy. He was just a regular guy who saw Captain America's exploits and said, well, he's a regular dude. I can do that too. So he joins the circus because everybody knows that the circus just lets random people with zero skill just join, right? And he joined the circus because I guess that's where all supervillains get their training in the 60s. You know, he studied with the world's best tumblers, and he lifted with the world's strongest strongmen, and he put on a costume and became the Tumbler. It's really lame. I can't remember. I've never seen this character in later issues. Now, he reminded me a lot of Batroc the Leaper, which is, you know, an argument could be had for whether or not Batroc is a lame villain, but Batroc is a classic Cap villain, and he shows up a lot over the years, whereas this guy, I don't know if he ever comes back. But the one thing that I thought about this, that was interesting about this issue, and the real Captain America finally gets free as Adaptoid Cap and Tumbler are fighting. The real Cap gets free, and when the real Cap sort of comes to, gets his senses about him, he takes on the Tumbler. He mops the floor with him, and I really like this four panel sequence right here. It's more of that awesome Kirby motion, especially this one. I love this panel. And again, audio listeners, sorry, it's a panel of Tumbler throwing Cap's shield at him and Cap catching it. It kind of goes past Cap a little bit. Cap catches it sort of behind him with his right arm, and Kirby just does that awesome. He's got this awesome sense of motion, and he really makes it work with Captain America with all the shield throwing. You can see the next panel here too, the shield ricocheting off the room. So, trying to get to the point here. The really cool thing I like about this is that the reason, and they don't really explicitly say it, but the reason that the Adaptoid had such a hard time beating Tumbler, even though he assumed the form of Captain America, is because, yes, he may have assumed Cap's physical presence, but he didn't copy his tactical prowess. And a lot of what the real Cap, when he's fighting Tumbler, a lot of what he's talking about is talking about, you didn't notice that I would do this, or I noticed that you would do this, which means I'm going to counteract with that. So you can see that the real Cap is more than just physical prowess. He's got the tactical knowledge as well, and that's what the Adaptoid did not take, and that's why he was able to be beaten. At the end of the issue, Cap and Jarvis tie up the Adaptoid, who goes back to his normal form. You can see him here, and lock him in a closet. Because, as you do when a dangerous shape-shifting robot tries to take over your identity, you tie him up and lock him in a closet. Now, he's going to come back next issue. He does say that already a new foolproof plan has formed within my thinking circuits, a plan which cannot fail to destroy Captain America. So I'll be reading that one again, like I said, tomorrow, and we'll talk about that next week to see what that plan actually is. All right. Moving on, we've got Daredevil number 22. Now, we talked about it last week. At the end of last issue, it did say next issue, meaning this issue, Daredevil is going to fight multiple villains, which I thought would be pretty cool. It ended up not being as cool as I wanted to. So, the gist of this story is, and it's kind of neat, this story picks up right where last issue were left off, where Daredevil and Judge Lewis are riding on that big giant mechanical owl that the owl made. They make it back to mainland, or the mainland, and the owl is going to set off a bomb, because I guess he planted a bomb in his owl too. Which, if you're going to build a giant mechanical bomb, sure, you're going to do that. But Daredevil hears the ticking and escapes. He and Judge Lewis get free. And we don't see the owl again. He's going to pop up again, but he was never captured, so he just goes into hiding, basically. And let me swap over to my notes for this one too, because there's a couple things. Oh, one thing I'll mention too, this panel, Karen Page is the worst character in this era of Marvel Comics. And it's illustrated very well in this panel. She says, "It's so good to have Matt back again with us. My life seems so strangely empty when he's gone." Why? I mean, are you not your own person? I mean, so basically, Karen, for 22 issues of Daredevil now, Karen has existed solely to be Matt's love interest, and that's irritating. And it's just how they wrote these things at the time. But she just served no other purpose than just to pine over Matt and be the love interest between Matt and Foggy. And you could argue the same thing about Pepper Potts between Tony and Happy. I was trying to think who else. I'm not sure if there's anybody else in the books that I'm reading, but I'm not reading all of them. But I cannot wait till this goes away. My life seems so strangely empty when he's gone. Well, come on, be your own person. And then a couple panels later, I hate this as well. I can't stand the Matt, Karen, Foggy love triangle. Foggy asks Karen out to dinner, and she thinks to herself, well, I might as well go out with Foggy since I haven't heard from Matt. I might as well settle for Foggy. She could, if she's not interested, she could just say no. She doesn't have to accept. She could just tell Foggy, I don't want to go, or no thanks, but she just settles for Foggy. So keep that in mind. She says, yes, I will go with you. But then Foggy says, I'll bet she'd have said that with a lot more enthusiasm if my name was Matt Murdock. So even though Karen says yes, she doesn't say it enthusiastically enough, which makes Foggy unhappy. Right after Karen accepts Foggy's invitation, she goes back to thinking about Matt, thinking, I hope he's all right. A sightless man all alone in the city. So I even made a note about it. I said, Karen is settling for Foggy because Matt isn't here. Foggy being upset that despite the fact that she said yes to dinner, she didn't say it with enough enthusiasm. Karen's still thinking about Matt, even after agreeing to dinner with Foggy. I hate everything about this panel, and I really do. I hate this love triangle. I cannot wait till we get out of it. We do get out of it. I just don't know how long it's going to take. This was cool, too. I really like this. I love Daredevil slinking around. Like I said last week, I love Daredevil being sneaky in castles for some reason. And we've seen 3 different castles in only 21 issues, which is kind of bizarre, but I love it. And then this is a really cool, again, Gene Colan on art. I really love this one panel of him just crouching on top of some kind of big statue. I dig that kind of stuff. Daredevil is such a cool character. I just kind of feel like he's underrated. But I love that stuff. So a lot of the rest of this issue is, there's a villain called Mass Marauder and a villain called Gladiator. Now, I don't know, we've seen them both before. I don't know how well Mask Marauder, how long he stays around in the lore of Daredevil. I know Gladiator does. Gladiator is one of, I don't want to say Daredevil's more prominent rogues gallery, but he's one of the rogues gallery, one of Daredevil's rogues gallery. And I don't know if Mass Marauder ends up staying that way because he's sort of ridiculous. But they've been in hiding for a while. They went into hiding, I think, before we started this show. So I don't remember what issue. I don't mean started the show tonight. I mean before we started making the show. I don't remember what issue that was, but they've been in hiding for a while, and as every supervillain does in the 60s, they have an android. Because every villain in the 60s knows how to make androids or knows somebody who does know how to make them. This android is special. It's called the Tri-Android because it will take 3 humans to bring him to life and to furnish the power for him. So you would think, oh, what villains are they going to get to feed into this android? Well, they just pick 3 randos. A short time later, a down-and-out wrestler known as the Mangler leaves a West Side gym. So they basically just get a big, dumb, strong guy, and they sort of... The visuals on this are weird. They sort of suck him up into a light, I guess, and sort of implant his essence into this android. So the android has strength. And then in another part of the teeming city, a fast-moving safecracker called the Dancer is silently going about his own endeavors. So they got like a thief, a real agile, limber thief guy, and then finally, still another Denzian of the underworld, known simply as the Brain, pulls a light cord, and he gets sucked up too. I didn't understand the whole sucking them up into a light. Like, I don't know if they're dead or what, but they basically pick 3 randos, a strong guy, an agile guy, and a smart guy. And they implant those characteristics into this Tri-Android. Oops, wrong way. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I guess they don't get permanently... I don't know how... I just see this panel here. So they're not dead, I guess, or their bodies are still there, but I just can't tell how they got there. But basically, if you're listening to this in an audio version, the 3 people they sucked up into the light is what I thought it was. They're actually stuck in these glass tubes in the hideout of the Gladiator and the Masked Marauder, and they've got these wires attached to their heads going into the android. So the android is basically going to be smart, he's going to be agile, and he's going to be strong. Okay. And they're going to send this android, after Daredevil because they want to run the Magia, because the head of the Magia has recently been defeated, and there's an opening. Basically, they're applying for a job. They say, "Look, mob bosses, if we can take down Daredevil with our super triple android, then we deserve to be leader." And the Magia says, "Yeah, okay, that sounds pretty good. Sure, let's see what you got." Going back to the offices of Nelson and Murdoch, Foggy gets tickets to a fight at the garden, and Karen says no. So Karen says no. So Foggy goes on by himself, and then so Karen and Matt are still at the office, and over the radio they hear about this android, this strange man. I don't know if the announcers know it's an android, but they hear about him interrupting the fight that Foggy's at. He's doing that because he knows it's going to get the attention of Daredevil. So Matt, in the office with Karen, has to figure out a way to get to the fight so we can take on this android. So what does he do? Let me read exactly what I wrote. Matt's plan here is questionable. In order to prevent Karen from learning that he is Daredevil, because remember, he's with Karen and he has to get away from her so that he can fight the android. So in order to prevent Karen from learning that he is Daredevil, he is going to put on a Daredevil costume in front of her and pretend to be Daredevil, which is exactly what he does. He tells Karen, "Look, we've got to save Foggy. The android is clamoring for Daredevil to show up. We don't know if Daredevil is going to show up. So here's what I'm going to do, Karen. I'm going to put on Foggy's fake Daredevil costume, which shouldn't fit him, by the way. It should be way too big. I'm going to put on Foggy's fake Daredevil costume and pretend to be Daredevil." And there's a panel there you can see of Karen driving. It's hard to even say. Karen is driving Matt in a fake Daredevil costume to the fight, so that, for as far as she knows, so that he can pretend to be Daredevil. Basically, what he's going to do is when they get there, he's gonna he's going to run off from her, and she's going to think that the real Daredevil is fighting. It's ridiculous. It's hard to even explain, but hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say. So he does pull away from Karen, and now Daredevil proper is just fighting this android, and he's having a hard time with it because the android is super strong, he's super agile, and he's super smart. So a lot of these last few pages are Daredevil fighting the android. He's having a hard time. Karen and Foggy are in the audience watching. And Karen's all freaked out. She says, "I can't find Matt anywhere. I should never have brought him here. We should have known the real Daredevil would show up." Even though she can't tell that it's him. She was right next to... Whatever. Whatever. Drives me crazy. So Daredevil's fighting the android. And meanwhile, Mass Marauder and Gladiator are watching all of this on a television circuit. And they realize that Karen and Foggy are important to Daredevil. So the very last panel, Gladiator and Mass Marauder say, "Daredevil, hear me. Franklin Nelson and his secretary Karen are in the arena. Surrender immediately or they die. This is my final ultimatum." And it's right after Daredevil had kind of not completely knocked out the android, but sort of taken him down a peg. So now we have to find out how Daredevil's going to get out of that one. So I'll be reading that one on Tuesday. I've actually been enjoying Daredevil quite a bit, but this one was pretty silly. Gladiator is a pretty decent villain. Mass Marauder's really lame, and the whole thing with them having an android and sucking in personalities from these other guys, it was weird. It was weird. I didn't love this one as much. All right, so we're gonna move on past that. We're gonna get to Avengers number 34, which wasn't any better. So I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Of the 6 books that I'm reading right now, Avengers is my least favorite from this era. Avengers just isn't good. I don't like it. I don't like the team makeup right now. They go on lame adventures. They fight lame villains. They still fight half the time. So this issue is all about a villain named the Living Laser. Now, he does show up again throughout the years. He's not a one-note villain like the Masked Marauder may end up being. But this issue made no sense. So this guy has a laser. And it's apparently a really super duper laser because he's cutting through a bank vault at the beginning of the issue. First page, he's cutting through a bank vault. He does it successfully, but he doesn't steal anything. He says, "They still don't suspect who I am or what my power is. But they'll know soon enough. The whole world will know when the right time comes. I'll toss this packet of bonds back down to them. It means nothing to me." Okay, so I guess he stole money just for a minute, but then he gave it right back. Because he just wants the notoriety. He doesn't care about the money. I don't know why, but he just wants them to know how powerful he is. "I merely wanted to prove my power, and I succeeded." Okay? So he robbed a bank. Well, I guess technically, hey, isn't that funny? In Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man robbed a bank, but technically didn't rob a bank, and so did Masked Marauder. Hey, that's why I read these like this, so that we can experience weird little things like that. So anyway, the Avengers. So I made a note here that said Earth's most elitist heroes, because they sit around. Let's see, I think it's on the next page. Yep, they sit around talking about whether it's worthy of their time to even go after this guy, because all he did was rob a bank. That's a little beneath the Avengers. Even Captain America, Sentinel of Liberty, a bank robbery. Is that all? Even Captain America's like, psh, whatever. Not worth it. I'm an Avenger. We're Avengers. But anyway, they do get involved. And I'm sorry, not Masked Marauder, Living Laser, he takes his costume off and he goes back to the scene of the crime because there's a big, everybody's standing around looking at what happened. And I'm mentioning this because I'm going to come back to it later. Here's the Living Laser right here. This guy, right? He sees Jan, the Wasp, that girl. This has never happened to me before. One look at her. And it was as though Lucy no longer existed. Lucy, I guess, is his girlfriend. She's the Wasp. I recognize her on sight. I've got to meet her somehow. Love at first sight with this guy seeing Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp. I'm going to talk about that later. But remember that. This issue's tough to talk about because it's so lame. He puts his living laser costume back on. Meanwhile, the Avengers are training. He wants to... what is he... You'll see why it's hard for me to talk about this in a second. Goliath and the Wasp just... Okay, so Captain America and Hawkeye take off in a jet to go somewhere. Living Laser is like 10 blocks away, and he sees the jet leave, and he just knows somehow that now Goliath and Jan are by themselves. He doesn't know who's in the jet, but he just assumes that it's Cap and Hawkeye. He says, my first objective must be to convince her, the Wasp, that the living laser is the most powerful of all. So he wants to prove that he's more powerful than Goliath, basically, so that Jan will fall in love with him, I guess. But, wait a minute. Goliath and the Wasp... Oh, I'm sorry. I had it wrong. He assumed that it was Goliath and Jan, Hank and Jan, that left in the jet. That's what it was. He's right. They were, but how does he know that? So Cap and Hawkeye are back at Avengers Mansion. Goliath and Wasp have flown away in the jet. So he follows them because he can fly, because he's got a laser on his wrist. So of course he can fly. He attacks Goliath and the Wasp. And he actually manages to... Does he beat him? He does. Yep, he manages... No, he doesn't. I'm sorry. I can't... This is so bizarre. I'll tell you why this is so bizarre. Because his motivation changes. Just without any explanation whatsoever. So remember earlier I said that the minute he saw Jan, he falls in love with her. He's madly in love with her. After this sequence right here, where he's actually captured by Goliath, that never comes up again. Not once. So the Avengers, Captain America and Hawkeye, they join Goliath to the lab that they went to, because they're still working on Goliath's size problem. They show up, they are going to take him into custody, but he actually manages to escape the jet. So he gets away, and he actually upgrades his laser to be even a more powerful frickin' laser, right? Remember, he's got one laser. So if you're listening in audio form and you can't see this, he's got one laser on his right hand. That's it. That's all he's got. Now, apparently, he can cut through a bank vault. It's pretty powerful, but he's got one, right? So he escapes the Avengers. He upgrades his laser. And then what does he do? He goes around New York destroying things that were already going to be destroyed anyway. So, like, there was a building that was going to be demolished. You know, they put up the explosives. It was gonna be torn down. So he flies over the building and blasts it with his laser, and it comes tumbling down. There's some airplanes that are obsolete, that are gonna be scrapped. He goes and cuts all the wings off of them. There's a boat that's gonna be scrapped, and he sinks it. Like, all this stuff that's already gonna be. It's not like he's even causing a lot of property damage, because this stuff's gonna be destroyed anyway. I don't know why he's doing this. This is so infuriating. The Avengers chase after him, and they finally catch up with him. And despite the fact that he has one laser on one hand, he's able to subdue Captain America and Hawkeye and the Wasp. And Goliath is not there, but he's gonna go there eventually. So he traps Cap and Hawkeye in like this laser, this like, if you can think about a cage, but it looks like it's made up of like lasers, right? So he captures them both in that. And then he sucks Wasp into a can, or a jar, or something like that. And in this last, it would have made perfect sense for when he kidnapped Jan. He said, "Oh, Jan, you're finally all mine. I love you," or something. It just never comes up. So it's so bizarre. This issue is so bizarre. This title is so hard to read right now. It's just not good. None of it is good. None of the last several issues, I can't even remember the last time Avengers was good. Maybe back when they were fighting the, not the Frightful Four, the Masters of Evil. I don't know. I'm moving on because this is his motivation. He doesn't have motivation. He just wants people to know that he's powerful with his one laser on his one hand. So he goes destroying things that are already going to be destroyed anyway. He manages to take down 3 Avengers with one laser. It's makes no sense, and we've got more of it next issue as well. So heaven help us all. Strange Tales number 150. Now again, Strange Tales is it's a twofer with Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Doctor Strange. I am not reading the Doctor Strange part. Nothing against it. I just don't really feel like it. I just really was more interested in like the S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff, the spy stuff, that kind of thing. This issue starts off really weird, but then it gets really interesting. So basically the gist of this is, I'm just going to try to explain it without going like page by page, panel by panel. But the gist is that S.H.I.E.L.D. has created a weapon, and it's called the Overkill Horn. Yeah, the Overkill Horn. They have created this, they call it the Overkill Horn because it uses sonics to detonate atomic weapons from a great distance, like almost like remote control detonating nukes. Think of it that way. So they developed this weapon for the sole purpose of figuring out how to stop this weapon, how to prevent this weapon from doing what they designed it to do, because they have intel that says some bad guys somewhere have the same kind of weapon. So if that made any sense at all, they developed a weapon that they think the bad guys have so that they could then figure out how to stop it. That kind of, I mean, okay, I guess I can sort of buy that. It sounds ridiculous, but I can sort of buy that. The weird thing about the beginning of this issue is the very first page, Nick Fury is in this weird chair. It almost looks like a mummy's tomb or something, but in chair form. It's weird, and he's in this chamber. Like, if you think about remember what Time Cop looked like? Remember the time travel device in Time Cop, and they had to sit in a chair, and then the chair went forward? It kind of looks like that, except the chair is all enclosed, and when this giant sonic weapon goes off, it shoots Fury backwards. I don't know why Fury's even anywhere near it. He doesn't have to be. That's really bizarre. He gets injured. Right? He's walking around half the issue with bandages around his head, and Dum Dum gets hurt as well. But because their weapon was successful in remote detonating an atomic missile, that proves that weapon does indeed work. Which is good news because they have proven that weapon works, but it's bad news because now they know that if the bad guys have it, it'll work for them too. You know what I mean? So they've got to figure out how to stop it. Nick Fury and Dum Dum both got injured. There's a scene where they're banging on each other. They're ramming into each other with their wheelchairs, and I even made note of this panel that says, I said, we get it. Even when they're injured, Nick Fury and Dum Dum Dugan are tough. Simmer down a bit. We get it. That's sort of my one gripe with this title is that, especially Nick Fury, he's so tough. Even when you say, good morning, Colonel Fury. What do you mean, good morning, you pansy-wasted, cotton-headed ninny muffin? You get back to work. Suck in that gut, soldier. What am I doing? What are you doing here if you're not going to... He's so hardcore all the time. It's sort of ridiculous. But where it gets interesting is that Fury gets invited to a party, basically. There's this eccentric billionaire named Don Caballero. He says, this is one of my many South American estates. He's super rich. He says, since I believe in enjoying my great wealth, I fly a group of my friends to different spots around the globe each month as my personal guests. So he's got a ton of money. he flies people to these exotic locations to have parties. I mean, that sounds pretty cool to me. I mean, that, so he invites Nick Fury to one of these parties. Nick Fury actually accepts. Okay? But it turns out that this guy is part of Hydra. Now, several issues ago, it looked like Hydra had been defeated. But there's a sequence here where a SHIELD operative is sort of snooping around the location of the next party. And it turns out, he says, we're right, Hydra still lives. But then he is disposed of. Okay. Don Caballero says, yes, I noticed he was not among the others. It was he who constantly suggested that I invite Fury to my next party. I suspected that he was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. all the time. Little did he dream that I would have invited Colonel Fury anyway. Since it was he who defeated Hydra in the past, it's only fitting that he be here to witness the greatest victory of the new Hydra Reborn. So I really dig this because I love classic S.H.I.E.L.D. versus Hydra. I mean, you have your Spider-Man versus Green Goblin, your Captain America versus Red Skull, if you want to cross the street, you've got your Superman and Lex Luthor, your Batman and your Joker. To me, up in that same echelon is your S.H.I.E.L.D. and your Hydra. I think I dig it. So Nick Fury is going to go off to this exotic location where he's going to meet with Don Caballero, who I don't know if he's the official new head of Hydra, but he's part of it if he's not already the head. And Hydra's still a thing. Now, at the end of the issue, at the end of the story, the S.H.I.E.L.D. base where Nick Fury is residing is attacked by a giant sonic boom. But we don't really know the circumstances behind it because this is where the issue ends. The very last panel is Nick Fury saying, I'm gambling every second of what remains that I'll find the answer in Carnopolis. That's where the party is. When I meet up with Senor Don Caballero. So, this is more of a setup issue, and this title has a lot of these where, there'll be a big story that happens, and then there'll be like a story or two in the middle that kind of sets up the next thing. So this is kind of that. This is going to set up what I hope is another cool story of S.H.I.E.L.D. fighting Hydra, or a renewed Hydra. Because remember, when they thought they took down Hydra the first time, Supreme Hydra ended up being the assistant to some businessman, right? I mean, it was kind of underwhelming. The reveal was a little bit underwhelming. Sure, it was, they were trying to catch us off guard, and they did, but it wasn't that fantabulous because it was just a no-name. So this is now we've got this eccentric billionaire who's kind of throwing his weight behind Hydra, this terrorist organization, and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s going to have to take him down. So I think that could prove to be some cool stories. So more on that next week. Hopefully we'll get a good story out of it next week. All right. Moving on to the last of the regular issues. Remember, we've got, this would be normally, after this, we would normally stop, but we've got 2 annuals to talk about after that. But those should be pretty quick to get through because annuals are pretty self-contained stories. But this issue, Fantastic Four number 56. Fantastic Four take on Claw. Now, Claw, we last saw a few issues ago in Wakanda when Fantastic Four were in Wakanda hanging out with Black Panther. And they learned of Claw's attack on Wakanda. We sort of saw his origin. They do recap it here, so we can talk about that. Oop, hang on. Let me get the page right. There we go. I did make note that this story opens up with Sue Richards walking around the Baxter building complaining that she can't find Reed. And she's complaining that Reed's always elbow deep in his experiments and he pays more attention to his science experiments than her. And I did make a note that says Sue is right to feel this way most of the time. However, at this point in time, they literally just got back from their honeymoon, which they did. So when they left Wakanda, they were going to go on their long overdue honeymoon, and they did. So they haven't been back for very long, and already Sue is complaining that Reed cares about his experiments more than her, even though they just literally got back from their honeymoon. And again, normally she's right, but this time she has nothing to complain about. I don't think. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's only just like 3 panels out of the story. She does find Reed and Ben. Reed is doing more experiments into the negative zone. This is great. This is just classic. Oh, hold on. I can't. I can't focus on that one panel because of how big it is. But you can see there, that is classic Jack Kirby right there. Just giant, bizarre-looking machines, bizarre-looking creatures. I mean, that is a Jack Kirby classic Kirby right there. But I'm going backwards. Hold on. So Reed's experimenting, and all of a sudden, Reed and Ben get trapped in the lab. They're trapped by this wall of sound, this wall of unbreakable sonic energy from Claw, who we last saw in Fantastic Four number 53, so 3 issues ago. And Claw is attacking the Baxter building because he believes that the Fantastic Four can draw out the Black Panther or call on the Black Panther to come help them, which will then give Claw the chance to attack Black Panther and get revenge. I don't know why. Well, I mean, I guess you would think that Claw could just go to Wakanda and fight the Black Panther, but Wakanda is secluded and they've got crazy defenses all over the place, so maybe it's easier to use the Fantastic Four as bait to draw out Black Panther. They don't really go into that level of detail, but it's this kind of stuff that I found myself thinking about. We do get a couple pages going back to the Inhumans, still stuck in their impenetrable dome in the Himalayas. But we don't spend a lot of time on that. Basically, Black Bolt, he entered into a machine. He was going to try to use his massive energy, his massive strength to get out. It didn't work. Now he's knocked out unconscious. So we get a couple more panels of the Inhumans, but nothing really happens. They're still ticked at Maximus for getting him stuck in the dome in the first place. Rightly so. But we don't stay there very long. Most of this issue is Claw attacking the Baxter building. And don't forget that Johnny and Wyatt Wingfoot are not there. They're still on their way to the Inhumans dome to try to break them out. So really it's Claw versus Reed and Sue and Ben. Claw gives a brief, not really his first origin, but he does give a brief flashback into how he wound up with this appearance, because he was just a regular dude who lost his hand and he attached a sonic device to his hand. Think about Andy Serkis, how he looked in Black Panther. That's what Claw looked like before he looked like this weird thing that he's looking at now, that he's looking like now. You know, he jumped into his sound converter and it changed his body into pure sound energy. So that's why he looks like that now. He's attacking Sue because, again, Reed and Ben are still stuck in the lab. He sealed them in with sonic energy. And they can't get out. So it's basically Sue versus Claw. Sue really should... I kind of feel like this is a step backwards for Sue because we've seen her over the last dozen, maybe even as much as 20 issues. Like, we've seen her become stronger, especially since she realized she had the power to create force fields around herself or around other people, or she could create invisible objects and use them as weapons. She became a stronger character, but she's kind of reverted lately. She hasn't really done as much lately. She's become weaker again, and that's unfortunate because, in my opinion, she's probably the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four, if she would ever be written that way. So she's fighting Claw. Ben's just tearing stuff up. Ben's like a bull in a china shop. Ben doesn't care what he destroys. He just rips up machinery, and without a care in the world as to what it actually does. But they're trying to get out. And it doesn't work. But then Reed fashions a device that Ben can wear that does help him get through the sonic barrier. It's just more of Claw chasing, literally just chasing Sue around the Bastard building. She's invisible. But Ben finally gets out, and he's taken on Claw as well. And we do get a little bit of an interlude with Johnny and Wyatt and Lockjaw. Remember last issue, they found Lockjaw. And Lockjaw had teleported. I guess he teleported out of the dome. And it doesn't, for some reason, he can't just teleport right back into the dome. They're sort of dimension hopping, which is kind of weird. But that doesn't really factor too much into this story. But stay tuned for a few more minutes, and we'll talk more about that. But most of this issue, with the exception of those couple interludes with the Inhumans and Johnny and Lockjaw and Wyatt, most of the issue is just the Fantastic Four fighting Claw. Just back and forth. You know, they finally get out. Ben and Reed finally get out of the lab. And Reed manages to get a message out to Black Panther in Wakanda and says, hey, we need some help. Black Panther sends a packet missile. Which, think about if, you know how they're talking about, Amazon's talking about delivering packages via drones? Think about that coming from Wakanda, and it's a missile instead of a drone, and it gets there super fast. Like, it can go halfway around the world. And Black Panther sends Reed some vibranium, they're not bracelets, but they're not brass knuckles, but they go on his fist, you know? So he can Reed puts these vibranium bands on his hands, and it allows him to punch Claw, because Claw is made up of sound energy, but vibranium absorbs sound. It absorbs vibration, sound, what have you. So it allows them to take down Claw. And I mean, that's it. You know, they stop him, they thank Black Panther, but at the end of the issue, we see Silver Surfer flying around again. So he's going to pop up again at some point. And the last panel does say, next up, Doctor Doom. So we are going to get another Doctor Doom story next issue, which is fantastic because, like Spider-Man Green Goblin, like Cap and Red Skull, like S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, you've also got Fantastic Four and Doctor Doom. So that's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to that. But this is a pretty decent issue. We're still dealing with the Inhumans thing, with Johnny being love struck over Crystal, even though he's only been around her for like 5 hours total over the course of the last 10 issues or whatever. So that's still a dangling plot thread, but we're getting closer, and we'll revisit that in a few minutes. But first, we have to jump over to our annuals. The first one being Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 3. So I read this one yesterday. I read both of these annuals yesterday. And so, for those who don't know, annuals are, comics come out once a month. Well, annuals come out once a year, right? So they are the monthly titles come out every 12 times a year, and then also an annual comes out once a year, and it's usually a longer story. Usually, it's a one and done story. Although over the years, the annuals have been put together to tell one grand story, or the annuals might factor into the ongoing monthly story somehow. Usually they aren't that way, though. And in this era of comics, in the 60s, it was usually just a regular size story and then 2 older stories reprinted. I'm reading this on the Marvel Unlimited app, and that app does not reprint the 2 extra stories. So even though this is a 72-page Amazing Spider-Man annual, it's really just another 20-page story, a one-and-done 20-page story. This story was frustrating because just for the time that I was reading this book, I did not like the Avengers at all. Now, I don't like the Avengers title itself in this era, but I really didn't like the Avengers for the duration of this one issue. So this issue was all about the Avengers saying, hey, that Spider-Man guy, should we let him join us? Why not? Well, when you think about it, because the Avengers have to be all bureaucratic and they have official meetings and chair people and rules and bylaws and whatever. It's ridiculous. But they think about, hey, maybe we should let Maybe we should let Spider-Man join us. Okay, sounds pretty cool, right? But they're such jerks about it. I'm gonna jump down to my notes here. I'm gonna read a little bit from what I put on the Twitter account, which I haven't mentioned is right here at _ Comics Daily on Twitter. So got to put the underscore and then just Comics Daily. So I mentioned I like the Avengers, but I don't think I've ever disliked them more than I did in this issue. They spend a couple of pages debating on whether they should even ask Spidey to join, and then after they all agree to it, they say that he needs to pass a test. So they are gung-ho on Spider-Man has to pass a test before he can join the Avengers, even though Hawkeye never went through a test. Quicksilver never went through a test. Scarlet Witch never went through a test. Cap technically never went through a test, but he did kind of prove himself when he first got thawed out. But Thor, Iron Man, Giant Man, Wasp, none of them ever went through a test. They just decided to be the Avengers. So I can maybe understand the founders because they just decided to be a group. But if you're not going to, if nothing else, if you're not going to put Hawkeye, who was a criminal, if you're not going to make him take a test, if you're not going to make Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch take a test, then why are you going to make Spider-Man take a test? But they are gung-ho. Spider-Man has to take a test before he can join the Avengers. And all the Avengers, okay, we agree. They sit around and they say, huh, well, what should the test be? If you have that stringent rules about what a hero has to do to join the Avengers, shouldn't you know what it is they have to do? Like if your rule is somebody has to take a test to be in the Avengers, shouldn't you already know what that test is? It takes them a while to agree on whether Spider-Man should be in the Avengers, and then when they do agree, they don't agree on what the test should be. It's like they're just making it up as they go along. It's almost like they're looking for an excuse for Spider-Man not to join, even though they all say they want him to join. So it's quite frustrating. And it's kind of hilarious. They say, hey, let's ask Daredevil what he thinks. So they summon Daredevil because Daredevil has fought both with and against Spider-Man up to that point. So they say, hey, Daredevil, we're thinking about asking Spider-Man to join the Avengers. What do you think about him? And of course, Daredevil's like, he has my highest recommendation. Now, everybody who knows Daredevil knows that Daredevil has made it known over the years that he doesn't want to be part of the Avengers. He doesn't want to really be part of any team. I mean, he's done the Defenders thing and all that, but he doesn't really want to be part of a team. He's a loner. He does things on his own. But that hasn't really been established up to this point in any of the books. So I found it hilarious that they summon a superhero who's not part of the Avengers to ask about another hero who they're thinking about asking to be the Avengers. So, I really wanted Daredevil to say, well, I mean, I wouldn't mind being an Avenger. If you guys will give, I'll do whatever test you want me to do. I just thought it was funny that, it's like in a movie where a guy has a best girlfriend who's in love with him, and he asks his best girlfriend how he should ask another girl out to the dance, and she gets all, the best girlfriend gets all distraught or whatever. So they agree they're going to ask Spidey. But they don't know. They still don't know what the test is. They just know he has to take a test. So they run around the city. They find Spider-Man. Thor does, and Thor tells him, "Hey, we want you to join the Avengers." So Spider-Man, he's not really sure yet. He thinks it would be cool, but he doesn't know how he would manage being a superhero for the Avengers and juggle school and juggle Aunt May, because again, remember Aunt May is like 1,000 years old, and if the wind changes, she could die, and all that ridiculous stuff. But he decides, you know what? I'm going for it. I'm going to be an Avenger. I'm gonna take him up on their offer. And there's this really cool page. I really like this page a lot. I would love to have a pin-up of this page without the wall of text. I really do like this. Now this this issue, the layouts were done by John Romita, and then Don Heck did the finishes. So you can see a little bit. You can see both their styles in it. This isn't full Romita, and I would have loved to see full Romita on Do Avengers with Spider-Man, but this is still pretty close. Welcome aboard. You got to take a test. You got to take a test. You got to take a test. And Iron Man says, okay, why don't you leave for a while we think up a test for you to take? They still don't know what they want him to do. And Spider-Man very understandably gets upset by this and says, listen, if you don't want me around, I'm out of here. And this causes Spider-Man to fight the Avengers because, of course, the heroes have to fight. Even Cap gets irritated with him and says, don't ever do that again. And Spider-Man gets all mad. So they right on the spot, they say, hey, wait a second. I've got an idea for a test. We need to bring the Hulk in. And I hear he's been stomping around the area. Spider-Man, for your test, you need to go single-handedly bring in the Hulk. The most powerful, strongest living creature on the planet. You need to go get him all by yourself. We're just going to stay here and chill. There are 6 of us. Thor, Iron Man, Wasp, Captain America, Hawkeye, Goliath. We're all just going to stay here and chill out while you go single-handedly try to bring in the Hulk. Someone who we as a whole team haven't been able to do before. And Spider-Man says, okay. So Spider-Man goes looking for the Hulk. Now, up to that point, I thought this was a pretty ridiculous issue because the Avengers are so unlikable in this. But then we get to several pages worth of just Spider-Man and the Hulk. I love when the Spider-Man and the Hulk are together. And it may be the 80s kid in me. So you remember in the 80s, Spider-Man had his own cartoon. First it was Spider-Man, then it was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. At the same time, Hulk had his own cartoon. And I watched both of those cartoons religiously every Saturday morning. So that may be why I love these two characters together. I'm not really sure what it is about these two characters. They, if you think about it, and if you look through the history of comics, they don't really interact that much. They're not like best buds. I mean, they meet up in all the crossovers and all the big summer events and all the Secret Wars and all that. And they've had run-ins, sure, but they aren't like regularly meeting up like somebody like Iron Man and Captain America would or something like that. But whenever Spidey and Hulk are together, I'm in. I think it's great. So they fight for a little bit, and obviously Spidey is way outmatched. But Hulk punches a gamma ray testing device and actually causes him to revert back into Bruce Banner. And, don't forget, nobody knows that Bruce Banner is the Hulk at this point. So Spider-Man realizes that, wait, you're just a guy. None of this is really your fault. You aren't doing this maliciously. You actually need help. And I don't want to take you back to the Avengers because it's not your fault that the Hulk does what he does, right? And Banner's pretty happy about this, and so he reverts back to the Hulk again. They fight just a little bit more, but then Spidey says, you know what, I can't do this. I gotta let him go. I caught the big fish, but I gotta set him free, because it's not his fault. He needs help. And he lets the Hulk go. So he goes back to Avengers Tower. Avengers Mansion, and says that I didn't do it. I failed. I couldn't find him. He doesn't even tell the Avengers that they fought. He just says, I couldn't find him at all. And he says, so sorry, see you later. Like he's cool with it. And that speaks to the character of Spider-Man is he puts the needs of others ahead of what he wants. He wants to be part of the Avengers, but he knows that Bruce Banner needs help. He doesn't want to turn in the Hulk to the Avengers. Now, one thing that the Avengers never got the chance to explain to Spider-Man why they wanted him to bring in the Hulk, because they apparently the Avengers wanted to help the Hulk as well. So they didn't want to capture him. They didn't want to lock him up. They wanted to help him. And so does Spider-Man. So it actually would have worked out better if Spider-Man had brought the Hulk back, but he didn't know what their motivation was. What's funny is that in one of the last panels on the last page, Iron Man says, "I wouldn't have believed it. He took his failure so lightly." And Wasp says that she's so disappointed. Basically, they're all disappointed that Spider-Man failed his test, right? Which means he can't be part of the Avengers, even though they came up with this test arbitrarily. It's not like it's a government law. They just came up with this. It would be like me telling my son, "I'm going to give you a cookie if you can jump 10 feet in the air." And then when he can't jump 10 feet in the air, me saying, "Ah, man, I'm really sad. I really wanted to give you this cookie, but you can't jump 10 feet in the air. So I can't give it to you." Well, there's just some silly rule. So they could have let him in. It's just it was so dumb. I really hated the Avengers in this issue. I liked Spider-Man in this because he very Spider-Man-esque. He's very noble, but it's just the Avengers were so dumb in this. It really made me mad because they were just so they're lame. They were so elitist in this. You have to take a test, even though none of us did. And that test, we don't know what it is. Oh wait, it's going to be taking down the Hulk, the most difficult thing on the planet. It was dumb. It was dumb. I was glad when this was over. Let's swap over. We got a few minutes left. We'll swap over to Fantastic Four Annual number 4. This one actually really probably won't take too long because this is another one of those issues where there's not a lot to it. Oh shoot. There it is. I was just looking for my notes here. There's not a lot to this issue. This issue is mostly an excuse for the current Human Torch to fight the original Human Torch from back in around the World War II era back in 1939. He was part of the Invaders with Captain America, Namor, and Bucky. Although I'm not sure if that had been established yet at this point. But basically, remember, so we talked in our other issue of Fantastic Four a few minutes ago about how Johnny was still hanging out with Wyatt and Lockjaw, trying to get the Inhumans out of their dome, right? Well, they actually show up in this issue. Lockjaw brings them back to the Baxter building. And as soon as I saw this, I was thinking, oh, this might be the issue where they free the Inhumans. And that's kind of interesting because usually annuals kind of stand alone from the ongoing monthly story. So it's a good thing I'm reading this because this is where the Inhumans get freed. Well, no, that isn't at all what happens. So it turns out that the Mad Thinker actually managed to bring the old Human Torch, the original Human Torch from the 30s and 40s era, World War II era, that Human Torch was actually an android. And the Mad Thinker actually manages to revive him. But his memories, he doesn't really remember a lot. So the Mad Thinker says, "Listen, there's another Human Torch out there that you've got to go destroy." He basically wants the original Human Torch to be his puppet, basically. And sorry, I'm a little yawny. I don't know where that came from. So he sets the original Human Torch on a quest to defeat the current Human Torch, Johnny Storm, and a lot of this is just them fighting, which is pretty neat. 2 Human Torches against each other, they have very similar powers. Like, which one's gonna win? And they fight. And most of this issue is 2 Human Torches. They even look similar when they're not flamed on. They're both blonde. It's basically just 2 Human Torches fighting. I'm paging through these pages fairly quickly because there's not much to really analyze on any of these pages because it's just them fighting. Now, I'll stop here because the Mad Thinker does have a machine that he calls Quasimodo, which stands for Quasi-Motivational Destruct Organ. It's basically an AI. It's basically a computer AI. Like he He says, I want to be in a body. I can think, I can feel, I can reason. But he looks like Quasimodo. Like, he looks like a hunchback. He's like a deformed face made up of electrons, or I think that's how they explained it. And so we jump back to the Thinker's lab just long enough to meet Quasimodo before it goes back to the two torches fighting. And there's more fighting. And it's kind of neat because the way it's colored, the original Human Torch is more orange colored, whereas Johnny Storm is like red when he's flamed on. So I was really kind of into how they colored the whole thing. The rest of the Fantastic Four and Wyatt show up, and they help to take down the original Human Torch. But then Lockjaw transports them to the Thinker's laboratory. The Thinker has been kind of blackmailing the original Human Torch, saying, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to destroy you. You're an android. I can flick of a switch and I can destroy you, basically. And when the original Human Torch joins the Fantastic Four to take down the Mad Thinker, that's exactly what happens. The Mad Thinker throws a switch, and the original Human Torch is destroyed. And then Lockjaw and Johnny and Wyatt teleport away again to continue their quest to free the Inhumans, and that's kind of where the issue ends. Now, the Mad Thinker does get away. They don't stop him. He gets away, but he leaves his Quasimodo AI computer, just kind of leaves him there. And it's kind of a sort of a dark ending for that. It just kind of shows him by himself. You can see in this last panel. He says, I want to be human just once before I die. I can succeed where the android failed. I can destroy the Fantastic Four. Don't leave me. So he's basically really upset that the Mad Thinker just left. But he did. He just left him by himself. He can't move or anything. So that was kind of dark. But, so yeah, this story was really just an excuse to have two Human Torches fighting. And that's fine, because really that's the point of an annual, is just to tell an ancillary story that doesn't really affect anything else, especially in the old days. Like I said, in the later, like in the 80s and 90s, annuals would be used to, like, I think about the Atlantis Attack storyline, where every annual that came out that year was part of the Atlantis Attack storyline. But back in this era, annuals were just a way to, you've got your stories going on month to month, but then releasing an annual is just a way to tell another story that just could be kind of inserted in the middle and didn't really affect anything that had been going on or was going to continue. So, even if you hadn't read this, you would be fine, because Johnny came back into the picture, did a little fighting, and then went right back to what he was doing. So, it was pretty good. I mean, it's cool seeing the two torches fight. I didn't really need any more than that. I didn't need any more story. I just wanted to see him fight. And then they went right on, Johnny and Wyatt and Lockjaw went right on about their quest. So I guess we're going to see more of that. I don't know. So next issue of Fantastic Four proper is Doctor Doom. I'm not sure if that's when the Inhumans get out or not, but we're going to keep reading and see. So that's going to be it, guys. This was a slightly longer episode, but I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I enjoy doing this, talking about these comics every week. If you want to follow me as I read these comics and discuss them every day, one a day on Twitter, just follow right here @_Comics Daily. Don't forget the underscore in front. I hate having to have that, but all the other ones were taken. So just on Twitter, _Comics Daily. Mondays I do Amazing Spider-Man. Tuesdays is Tales of Suspense. Sundays is Amazing Spider-Man. Mondays is Tales of Suspense. Tuesday is Daredevil. Wednesday is Avengers. Thursday is Strange Tales. Friday is Fantastic Four. And then Saturday is a wild card. So sometimes it's a DC book. Sometimes it's annuals. So I know we've got more annuals on the schedule. I don't think we have any more till November. So I've got a spreadsheet that actually tells me what I'm reading when all the way out to the next couple of years. So November 14th is the next Saturday where we have annuals. I do know that 2 Saturdays from now is that's September 19th. That day is actually Batman Day, so we're gonna read a Batman book. I have one in mind, but I'm not sure yet. So, just because I'm reading Marvel doesn't mean that I don't like other. I love DC. I love Image stuff. Image is putting out a lot of cool stuff right now. Old books, new books. I read everything basically. If it's a good story, I'll read it, no matter who's publishing it or what. So I'm out of here. If you guys want to stick around, we're going to be recording the new episode of the Anything New podcast right here on this channel in a few minutes. I am going to go offline, run upstairs, grab a drink, do a couple things, and then I'll be right back down, and we'll be recording the next episode of the Anything New podcast. And as far as Comics Daily Weekly goes, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.